We're excited to be back on another episode of the Overnight Success Podcast. And today I have a guest that I'm very excited to speak with. Mr. Dax Patton is an entrepreneur who's built ventures at the intersection of marketing, media, and purpose. He was early in his early days, he was at corporate and in Austin, Texas's startup scene, helping at South by Southwest and helping global brands and innovative startups create new opportunities. Dax has also built a career on turning ideas into execution, which I absolutely love, and I see him executing every single day. And today he leads Pickled Agency, the Spirit Oceano Foundation, and City Box Ads. He's a busy guy, and so we're thankful for his time today. His ventures that span digital marketing, sustainable innovation, and the disruption of traditional out of home advertising. So, Dax, I know we've chatted in the past, and I'm super excited to have you on the podcast today. I would love to hear your story of how this overnight success came to play. And so, with that, I'm going to turn it right over to you. Tell us a little bit more about who you are and where you got started.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It's always a pleasure to get to talk with you and, through all the mentoring over the years and stuff like that. So just excited to be here. Yes. A little bit about me. Where do I start? Generation Tejano, Texan. My family actually came from San Antonio and, um, you I grew up in Austin, went to high school there, went to college at Texas Tech University, Recon, uh, doing pretty great in football this year, but I graduated with degrees in marketing and advertising. So got into the workforce, like you had mentioned, jumped into corporate society and learned how to be an ant in an ant hill and what all that entails. And yeah, that was kind of that Great Recession time when I entered into the workforce and moved to Dallas and doing all the things. Took a promotion up to Tulsa, Oklahoma. Kind of started up a division there for the company. I was in staffing and recruiting. It was a really great first job for a young professional. Allowed me to learn the hiring process, which I've been using my entire career now. It also helped me realize how important, strong foundation and good people are. So that was corporate life. From there, I was able to jump into my first tech startup, Digital Touch Systems. We were building touchscreen computers and displays ranging from 20 projected capacitive touchscreens, all in one computers, to 100-inch infrared or multi-screen, touchscreen displays, and could be used within education, healthcare. It was pretty industry agnostic, and that kind of played into a big part, or foreshadowed a big part of what my career kind of became, which was very agnostic. And I feel like I worked with almost every single industry from healthcare to defense to the arts, music, film, all kinds of stuff. Yeah, digital touch systems was kind of my school of hard knocks for bootstrapping for startup life, and it was at a great time, which was kind of this new startup tech scene in Austin that 2007, 8, 9, 10, and so on to what it is now today. We have some of the largest tech companies in the world posting up shop there. So kind of Austin was a great ecosystem, and then that's kind of spread through this South Texas corridor, which is, kind of this connection between San Antonio, South Texas, and Austin, and everything that's happening, in between. From there, yeah, I went and worked for South by Southwest. We can talk on that a bit. That was playing entrepreneur a little bit. And since then, I've jumped back into entrepreneurship. So that was about 4.5 years of playing this entrepreneur thing, and we can talk a little bit about that. But then we get to today, which is me and kind of my A, B, C time. that you and I have talked about before. I can't fit anything else on here, but A has kind of been my marketing agency, my digital marketing agency, Pickled agency, and that's kind of been my foundation. As I knew I wanted to build something bigger, I just didn't know what that was at the time, and this is kind of around 2020, 2021 when I kind of jumped back into entrepreneurship and built this marketing agency so I could start ABC testing different ventures and big ideas. And so today, two of those big ideas is what you mentioned, Spirit Oceano Foundation, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the most sustainable traditional form of burial today, which is full body, go friendly sea burial. And then to my other more for profit venture that we're bootstrapping and scaling right now is City Box Advertising, which we're converting roll off containers, or you might know them as commercial dumpsters, and turning them into mobile billboards. We already have a network of 1,100. We have over 40 commercial vehicles that are currently transporting these units, and we're catching up as fast as possible, converting them into 18 plus wide, 6 foot tall billboards that are going really where no billboard has ever got before. That's a little bit of me today, from point A to point wherever we're at.
I like this a lot. So you gave us like the tip of the iceberg of all of your journeys and being a scrappy digital tech space to jumping into the front end of South by Southwest and really helping shape what that is today. I know in the past I've heard a story about how you really looked at other ecosystems and said, I need to get to those places and lived out of the van and did the hard thing, right? And so really pinpointing what you're good at. And I think too, also touching into Pickled Agency, you've taken all of these years of experience to create a marketing agency that now helps you flourish in these nonprofit and for-profit worlds of places that people. I remember the first time I heard you talk about Spirit Oceano, I was like, you're doing what? Okay, tell me more. I'm curious, right? And then also then you tell me about these roll-off dumpster advertising and I'm like, okay, Dax, you're doing what? And so it's really fun to hear. So tell us a little bit more about that, like couch to success, because you highlighted your story, but I would love to hear a story about why you chose to keep going, or maybe a gritty time where you chose to keep showing up, and it was like, oh no, is this really going to work out? And that determination and that grit, I think our audience will get a lot out of a story like that. So if you could maybe pull on a thread of one or two of your experiences as an entrepreneur or an entrepreneur and how that shows up for where you got to from where you were to where you are today.
Yeah, thank you. Gosh, overnight successes. There's a lot of overnights involved in that. And I think where it kind of started for me from an entrepreneurial journey and seeing what an individual or individuals could do with by leveraging technology that was available was going to be kind of its digital touch systems where I was just leaving corporate life. I'd had, you know, base and commissions and car loans and cell phone loans. And like, I mean, it's kind of like, okay, cool, healthcare, this is comfy. This is great. And then, you know, kind of having that curiosity, for what's beyond that. And then having the opportunity where a couple of your buddies from college are, taking touchscreen computers and placing them flush in tabletops and putting a interactive menu software and gaming software and then putting this in restaurants and being like, wow, that's really innovative and cool. And they're like, yeah, you want to come help? Oh, sure. How do I get paid? How do we make money? kind of jumping into this role as a young professional at the age of what 25, 26, whatever that was, and having to kind of go from this comfort zone to like, hey, you know, very humbling, moments where, you're working two or three other jobs, just to be able to do what you really want to do. And so, back when I started working with my two friends at Digital Touch Systems in, late 2010, early 2011, I had to, bills don't stop and all that jazz. And so, I was working. Heck, I just moved back to Austin. I started working at the Christmas tree lot because the holidays was, it was holiday time, and with a couple of degrees, but going back to a minimum wage, tip environment, working with high school kids, you're like, oh, okay, well, let me show them how to work, and then, doing tenant build out, construction projects and being the, project coordinator on that, something I'd never done, but hey, it was good hours and good pay, to, selling really nice windows door to door, like literally door to door, being a bearded person going up to random people's doors to try to sell them $20,000 window projects. So yeah. And then what was cool, while those were helping pay the bills, each year that would go by, where we had faith and we were doing this directional push, we'd start making money over here on the actual startup side. And each year I was able to knock off, one of these jobs. Maybe it happened a little quicker than that. I got rid of the Christmas tree job pretty quick after obviously Christmas holidays. So anyways, but it was very humbling. And then because if you didn't, and everything was very results driven, like for example, the window selling and all that stuff, but it was all with just one goal. It was to not have to do any of these other things so I could focus on this. And I spent 4 or 5 years building this company from the ground up to its first $1 million in sales, and being able to define these products, being able to shift when something was too cost prohibitive for the market or the timing wasn't right, and then to adjust to again be able to scale this some more. And, I could go into a lot more detail, but that was probably the most humbling time in my entrepreneurial journey, even though it's become very humbling again. But, having the friends and family around you that are so supportive, but actually at sometimes may question, are you sure this is going to work? And while that can be tough to hear, it can also be motivating, especially being able to go prove that yes, it was. We ended up selling that company in 2022. Yeah, I still had a little bit of equity in it, and no, I didn't make much, but I feel like I finally went full cycle. And, we started that with just a little bit of friend and family money early on, and the rest was us. And so that was like humbling. It was my school of hard knocks for startup life. It was like allowed me to also, when I got from here to here, it allowed me to like have more confidence in my ability as a marketer, as a business professional, and as a leader. And so that was really good, and I think really important early on. And I feel very fortunate to have gotten to experience that because I'm a much more efficient, entrepreneur and professional today because of all the hardships and all the mistakes that was made so early on. So yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I think there's a few things here. So, as we'll call you successful exit founder, even if you didn't make a lot of money, you still did that. And so confidence is built by executing. And one thing that I've learned from you specifically is to execute quickly and kind of don't overthink those things. And two words that really stood out with what you just shared is and being able to adjust or shift. And so when we're looking at these ventures that you've continued to go down, whether that be through the digital SaaS
Interesting.
technology or through South by Southwest or even through what you're working on today, the Pickled Agency, Spirit Oceano, Box Ad Agency. Like there's so much happening. How do you keep showing up? Like, what fills your cup, and how do you choose to keep showing up? Because again, I think confidence is built and you're showcasing that to yourself. And the last thing I'll say here is, you the phrase everybody's heard it at this point is you are like the five people you surround yourself with. And something that I think is challenging sometimes as an entrepreneur is you don't always surround yourself with entrepreneurs, right? And your family may not be entrepreneurs or your friends. And so that feedback can be powerful or it can be diminishing. And so I would love to hear more about how or why you choose to keep showing up and doing the hard things.
Curiosity is one of them for sure. Um, I'm an adventurer. I love adventuring, and entrepreneurship is probably the biggest adventure I've ever been on, and it's taken me on some of the biggest adventures I've ever been on, literally. So, say, that's kind of the one of the driving forces is my curiosity. So that driving force, needs a lot behind it. So curiosity needs a lot behind it to maintain. And I'd say that's where I've gotten a lot better in recent years because, it's gotten harder in, having the tools and the tool belt are so important for your personal self. So, today I have better, practices in my daily life than I ever have. My meditation, prayer time, my consistency. I give it all back to God and Jesus. Live as Jesus did. I'm like, that guy's as good as it gets. So you can at least have something, to shoot for. It's helped me a lot. And it's also given me kind of like a limitless like resource of space that I can go to decompress, to think, to, take time. And so that's been like a really important foundational backbone for me. And it hasn't always been from the center. So I'm really thankful for that today because it's allowed me to make the bigger moves and have more confidence and just more strength mentally, physically, because and then we get into the physical stuff and it's, just like the sleep, right? I'm not the young entrepreneur that I was back then, where sleeping in the office, like just working on the midnight, burning the midnight oil and stuff. Like, still got it in me. Don't get me wrong, but it's very much more calculated because you know, because I need to show up for so many other people that next day. And so that's super important is the health and wellness side of it. And so I wish I knew that more in my younger age, because I probably wouldn't have so much gray in my hair. But I'm really thankful for, and that's what I preach the most, as and mentor, within the mentorship community, if they're Geekdom or Tampa Bay Wave or wherever I give back, is just like, hey, like you're early on in this journey, maybe, and start building up that tool belt now. And like, what is good for you? Is it waking up and going on a walk in the morning? Is it listening to positive music? Is it meditation time? But also like spreading those things throughout the day, right? Is it getting up, every 20 minutes just to go outside for a 5 minute like vitamin D break, and because coming back so you can have a bigger, longer, powerful working cycle. So it's those types of things that, I'm super thankful that I've taken more time today to strengthen, but it's all these things that have come from the past and lessons learned and all that, but really leaning on it today. So I have more strength and I can show up for those people and I can really put the right energy into, these focused areas. And today also, my is in the technology with that, right? Is that's kind of been something big for me back when we first jumped into this tech startup or startup life. I luckily had Google. I Google how to build a computer, Google how to do this type of coding, Google how to do this, Google how to do that. So Google how to get our products sold, all this stuff. So today it's like now I'm re-entering, this new phase of building, of bootstrapping new entities. And I'm able to leverage the innovation that exists today with LLMs, ChatGPT or whatever, and mass output. Myself, team members. Now I'm building AI into my every job description, for any employee that I have. And then lastly, we kind of touched about like who is your inner circle, where's that? I've always been a big proponent of like mentorship and being a mentee. I've gotten a little bit further away from being mentored than I'd like to. I still have my mentors and I feel fortunate to have like really great people that I can call on. My circle is a lot tighter now. It's my immediate family. I'm so focused on not socializing, which is not necessarily good, but I'm in a new cycle. I'm in a new phase. I'm in this new time in my life, in my professional journey, where it's time to kind of stay laser focused so I can build further and so I can do more good and support, more. And so, it's very a tight knit circle. It's God, family, and hey, just my friends, I miss you guys so much. I miss you guys. But it's like, they're always still there. And those people that are close to you know, they know what you're doing.
I appreciate you sharing that. I want to call out a couple of things. One is I'm going to just pull from Kobe Bryant for a second. I remember seeing a podcast interview with him back in the day, and the interviewer said, "Well, aren't you missing things? And like, aren't you sad that you're missing out on those friend relationships or those family relationships?" And his why was so powerful. Like he had that Mamba mentality, right? And that comes down to that laser focus. And I think that as an entrepreneur, it's so important that we know what our focus is, we know what our why is, and our friends and family will respect us if we're pursuing that, right? And so I think that's extremely powerful of what you're sharing here. And there's two questions that come to mind. So I'm going to pose both of them and you can come at them as you choose. But one of them is I would love to hear how you define success, and the other question is, I would love to hear more about ABC time. And we talked about this in the past offline, but when we look at your ABC time, you're very busy. You're building three companies at the moment. You've got a team and a supportive ecosystem around you. How do you show up? You kind of explained that you're taking care of yourself mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically, but now we're looking at, okay, but time is our most valuable resource and it's coming, right? And how are you juggling all these things? So just to kind of encapsulate that, would love to hear how you define success and then also what ABC time is to you.
If we'll start with the defining success because luckily my wife just asked me this recently. I told her, I don't need to be a billionaire by any means. I don't, strive for that. I strive for one thing, it's doing good, doing as much good in this lifetime I can possibly do. And so that's what motivates me, because that encompasses everything. And so what my success is, I think that has to be layered, I would say. And I just get to here. So it's kind of like, well, what does that success look for me? What's the next level of success, I would say? Because I feel successful just having a breath every day. That's a success for me. So I keep low bar. But when it comes to maybe an extended amount of success from there, I would say it's taking care of my family. Could I pay off my parents', mortgage, you know, pay off our mortgages? Could I, protect and take care of my siblings, even though they don't need it, even though my parents don't need it. But it's kind of like, could I, under any circumstance, take care of my family? That's where I would like to be. And then from there, it's kind of like, awesome. I took care of my family. Now, how can I take care of others? And like, it makes me a little emotional just because it's like, that's because that's what my foundation is, right? Is doing good, being good. And so it's like, how could I do as much good in this world, right? I feel like it takes some money. So I got to go because I just want to give, like, so I'm like, okay, that's kind of success for me. It's like, can I just like take care of my own and take care of others? And how many others can I take care of? So I feel like when I start really being able to take care of others, just like blessing people, I guess, is just like, man, okay, what's next? So that's kind of, success for me, you know, point it, at least where it can start.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. That's super cool. I think that's a very powerful metric, so to speak, and I really love that. Thank you for sharing.
So I guess the second part that you mentioned was the ABC time and how do I balance that out and all that jazz? Good question. Um, yeah, right now I'm feeling like I'm able to balance it out better than ever. Although just a few weeks ago it was really tough. Um, it's just because it wasn't always like that. It wasn't always an ABC time. I was willing to do D, E, and F, and then that was kind of the problem. A lot of what I heard growing up as a young entrepreneur was like, you got to stay laser focused on the one thing. Yeah. I do agree to a certain extent because times are a changing, innovation is a changing, and it's not uncommon today to have somebody that is doing more than one thing. While there's a timing and a strategy behind that, Pickled Agency is my baby. I always wanted a marketing agency and I always wanted to work at a advertising agency and all this stuff. And I never traditionally really did that. They were my clients, I was their vendors or, this or that. But this was like kind of my creative outlet and a very big foundational move. And it didn't look like what it looked like from point day one. It was actually, me starting up an LLC while I was still had a full-time job, right? It was January 2020. I filed Dax Patton LLC. We had a pandemic coming upon us. We didn't really know, but with South by, I was working there. Had built a pretty large book of business, multi-million dollar book of business, and yeah, things were good. But I was kind of getting a little bit complacent as I am, as I'm an adventurer, and I always want to make sure I got something to keep my attention. And so, I wanted to kind of start like not putting all my eggs in one basket, this, full-time job, where I was relying on somebody else to make sure there's food on my plate. I wanted to never have to rely on my salary. I just bought a house and I was like, friend, I never want to rely on this job to pay that mortgage or get the food on my plate. So I was like, okay, well, how do I change that? So I was like, okay, let's start a little consulting business and figure out what that is. Well, timing's really interesting how that plays out. And I don't know what juju is happening in the world, but like that was really great timing for me to start dipping my toes back into entrepreneurship after 4.5 years and being very comfortable and successful and, you know, moving up this corporate ladder again. But then yeah, I mean, things happened and so now I was like, okay, cool. Like now, well, good thing I had this other thing because the pandemic just wiped out this annual event. And so now it's like, okay, well, I'm glad I had the kind of this A-B thing happening. And so I learned a little bit about this ABC thing and D thing when I was doing the first tech startup, right? I was working all these odd jobs just to make ends meet. But now I wanted to be a lot more calculated and strategic about it. And I didn't even know what it looked like over here, the B time. So that's where I kind of kept it kind of cast a wide net. And Then, a year later that became Pickled Agency, and that was kind of like awesome. Like, I was working with a lot of tech startups, like small businesses, and I was rinsing and repeating. I was doing what they needed to do on a regular basis, like, building websites or, doing marketing plans or branding or all this stuff, like accelerated experience at that. And now I've been doing accelerated experience for people who just had his 4-year anniversary a couple months ago. Yay. We just had one of our biggest months, the last couple months just keeps going up. So, and it goes through different cycles because sometimes it's getting all the attention it needs. Other times it's getting neglected, and so that 4 years, there's a lot that has happened in that amount of time. But what I did learn was kind of like seeing how people prioritize their efforts with these other startups, with these other entities, these other businesses, and just being able to like learn and put those efforts back into our own, and so now Pickled Agency became kind of this foundational thing where sometimes I would be brought like other ventures or other entrepreneurs that wanted to work with us and wanted to partner on things. And so that's kind of where Spirit Oceano came from, for example. It's also actually where City Box Advertising came from, because it was people within this network of my foundation that I was working with, that I was building rapport with, that I was uncovering new opportunities with, and all that stuff. It kind of led to, but at times, not all those worked out, right? Here we are, 4 or 5 years of this, you know, January 2020. It's just kind of like has been a lot of those didn't work out. I was the chief marketing officer for a AI startup, that, we had people from Palo Alto, we had awesome LLM, like computer scientists, engineers, we had this amazing team that I thought, man, getting $10 million projects. It was like crazy awesome, but things happen and it doesn't work out. And so, but hey, you still got this foundation over here. Hey, it might have got beat up along the way because maybe we had to reinvest into other things. Maybe we had to, move some of our priorities and all that stuff. And so it's been really a learning experience for me over all those years and A, B, C, D, E, F, D testing different ventures. But I've gotten so good at it now that I'm like, okay, well, don't waste your time with that. Okay, this has not been working out for this amount of time. It's time to cut that off. And now it's like, okay, well, each of these start hitting these different objectives, these different goals, these different KPIs, these different things, and keep proving themselves. And they also have the biggest opportunity in the market, right? These are unicorns, unicorns, unicorns. And it's like, whoa, okay. This is just a little marketing agency that, hey, this gets to I was talking with my buddy the other day, and, he's going to be a couple of my buddies recently. They're gonna have $20 million, plus a year revenue companies. And one of them, on his way, as an agency owner. And I'm just getting to meet with a peer like that and seeing, it working out for him. And so I love Pickled. It's been through the ringers. It's the strongest. My team members been with me for over 3 years, some of those 4 years. And so it's allowed me to better ABC test. Um, and and it's the experiences that I've had over this amount of time that really defines the why of it's only goes to C now, and also what gets to that. And C doesn't get as much time as A and B do. But sometimes A and B battle for each other.
Yeah. No, that's powerful. I appreciate you sharing that because time is limited, right? And your experiences have helped shape you to get to what you prioritize and what success looks like to you helps you prioritize is what I'm hearing and what your why is. And things become different differently important and prioritized during different seasons, which is very powerful. So, as we start to kind of wrap up here, I would ask you is do you have any, we'll call it either a book or a podcast recommendation that has really helped you either shape where you are to today or that you're just all in right now and you're can't get enough of it?
There's so many books since, only so much time as well. I commute to another city twice a week, uh, between San Antonio and Austin. And I've been using that time to do few things actually. On the way down, 5 1 years on the way down, I do my, reading and stuff. On the way back, then I listen to some positive music, get myself pumped up, for getting right in the office. And then on the way back, I've been dedicating that time to audiobooks. One of the most recent ones, it was actually a friend of mine wrote the book, and it's Sales Lab Scripting. It's two guys. AJ is a buddy of mine. He's one of the co-authors. It's all about really high volume phone sales. They're talking about, two call close. First call, asking for, do you have 30 seconds for me? It's a low ask. Most people are going to say, okay, got 30 seconds, I guess. What do you got? Within those next 30 seconds, they're going to have to maybe a minute at least. Your objective is to set that meeting. And, you're being calculated with who you're calling and, and your time, your targets are. But, the first call you set the meeting, right? And you've got a script that you are following word for word because you took about a month or so putting this darn thing together. It's every word is just result and give a feel. So I've been reading that because there's a part in one of my companies that I need to implement this. And so it's been really good as a refresher. My first job was smiling and dialing. So it's good for me to read this from a managerial standpoint. And as I'm also onboarding new reps. So that was really good for me at the time. It was a solid book. It was very sales focused. I've got another one right here from another entrepreneur, Building Rocket Ships, a very product focused book. So it's really more about like, what do I need right then and there? And even if I'm skilled in it, it's always good for a refresher. And the other thing so that's one of the parts. The third thing I'm using with this time as I'm driving, I've been using like ChatGPT, the voice model, to solve problems. And that's been huge because I've had this window of an hour and a half, hour, 45 minutes when there's traffic, right? To when in the past I can listen to audiobook, but now I'm actually having a two-way conversation with the LLM solving problems and giving tasks on driving. Like I'm talking more output. It's been wild.
I love that. So what I'm hearing is continuing on that consistent curiosity. You're a learner. You're going to keep learning new things, even refreshing, right? And then in addition to that, executing. And so you take this idea into application and you execute it and leveraging the technology to help you do that is absolutely incredible. And I think that, we're in order to be the best and most successful entrepreneurs, you do have to leverage that quote unquote windshield time is what I like to call it because you're stuck behind the windshield, right? And so you're netting as much time as you possibly can. And so the last question for you before we wrap up here is there anything that I haven't asked you that I probably should have asked you or that you would like to share with our audience?
I mean, there's always things to ask. You should be asking, so many open-ended questions, to those who have, knowledge and information you can gain from, listening. I love talking. I love it. I could talk forever. One of the biggest things I've had to learn is to listen 80% of the time. And so I could deliver the best 20% of talking that I possibly can. And then it goes back to the efficiency thing. And it can be applied to so many things. You know, they say in sales, the 80/20 rule. They say so many things, the 80/20 rule. And so I think like always ask questions, always ask open-ended questions. You know, always strive to, listen quick, speak slow, and
I like that. Well, Dax, I know you have a lot of resources available for our audience to include a newsletter, an e-course, 3 companies. So why don't you tell us where we can find you?
well, personally, and on LinkedIn, well, you can find me on most of my social channels at Dax Patton, DaxPattn. You can find me at Pickled Agency, at Agency Pickled on Instagram, but pickledagency.com if you are looking for a solid marketing agency. Happy to talk to you about that. Citybox Advertising, that's my cityboxadvertising.com. Really exciting company. If you are looking to get a message out in Central Texas, we're also building our first units out in Houston. I invite you to contact me. You can find more information at that website. It's Spirit Oceano Foundation. This is one of the biggest opportunities that I think I have to do good, which is to educate as many people as I can about green burial practices and just prioritizing that for yourself or loved ones. Cremation and traditional ground burials aren't necessarily the way to go. There's so many, awesome ways for green burials. And if you live by an ocean, check out an eco-friendly green burial. For more information and a free ebook that I've written, you can go to spiritoceano.org and we invite you to take the free pledge. Then lastly, yeah, I think that's about it.
Well, I know you're a wealth of knowledge and a scrappy entrepreneur in a way that you just show up, you execute, you stay aligned with your why. And like you said earlier in the episode, is there's been a lot of overnights, but you're finding that pathway to success. And it's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you. So with that, Dax, thank you so much for your time. And until next time, this is the Overnight Success Podcast.
Thank you, Christian.